Welcome back to In the Arena. We've been talking about indulgences, and Msgr, I asked you to hold that thought. It was about purgatory.
Right, and just seeing purgatory as really a sign of God's mercy, so that all the residual effects of our sins can be purified from us, so that we can enter into the fullness of a love relationship with God, which is what we're made for.
Because even with death, it's not over.
Right.
Okay. And now we're going to switch topics here. I'm going to segue into something that has really been a hot topic of discussion in the Brooklyn Diocese, and that is the subject of the parochial schools and the proposal to make 4 of them charter schools. Father, can you explain, first of all, what is a charter school?
A charter school is a public school. That's the starting point. It's a public school, but it's a different type of public school, right? So it's not under the Board of Education in the way that my school, where I grew up, PS32 was, right? PS32 was a public school that was under the Board of Education. A charter school has its own curriculum. It abides by the state curriculum guidelines, but the resources they choose are different. The teachers, they hire their own teachers. They set the curriculum. They set the standards of education, right? And at the same time, the funding mechanism is really through the state and the city of New York.
But there are some accusations or some concerns that this will actually be parochial education under the guise of public education.
Yeah, and that's not the case. You know, recently Americans United for the Separation of Church and State issued a press release precisely on the charter school initiative that the mayor and bishop announced last week. You know, when I looked at that press release, and basically I don't think that we're going to have problems with what Americans United for the Separation of Church and State are looking to do. Charter schools are not Catholic schools. However, we believe that charter schools can be a very valuable mechanism, right, for the formation of the human person, right, to focus really in on those virtues which are known as the Greek virtues or the moral virtues, the formation of the person, to make them good citizens, wholesome citizens, and hopefully also not only good and faithful citizens, but hopefully at the same time be receptive to hearing the message of the gospel.
But Grant, wouldn't a key element for you thinking about this as a journalist and as a Catholic be, how do you, under the laws of the Constitution of the United States and under the way that kids are educated today, how does all of this gel for you?
Yeah, to me, it's still an open question. I mean, we have to see the specifics of what this agreement is. You know, how will this body that the diocese will set up to run these schools, how will they cope with what the city mandates for health classes? I mean,
like the 4th grade
exactly.
sex or the 4th grade health education concept?
Exactly. Presumably that presents a bit of a speed bump for the diocese.
But not necessarily. I mean, there's a general perception out there that the Catholic Church doesn't believe in sex education. That's not the case. Catholic Church is a supporter of sex education. The question is what is it that you're educating? How is it that you're educating? You know, human sexuality is a big part of who we are. That's not something that starts when you're 18. That starts when, you know, from the moment you're born, right? The question is what's the formation, what's the education, what is it that you're seeking to accomplish? And so from our perspective, I think that the sex ed curriculum posed by the 4th grade, at least as I've read it, is not going to pose such a major obstacle to our embracing charter schools.
Msgr, it could also be said that a lot of the Catholic schools today have many students who are not Catholic.
That's true. It varies in the diocese. You know, there are some schools that are almost 100% Catholic, and then there are others that are really not that high of a percentage. So it's such a range. I think at this point, you know, the issue you raise is a very important one, and I think it's really still a proposal that there are a lot of things that need to be discussed. There are a lot of possible difficulties that will need to be worked out.
I think the key question here is that, you know, let's take a look at what's really been happening in Catholic education over the last 20 years or so. And if we look over just the last 10 years, in the Diocese of Brooklyn alone, enrollment in Catholic schools has gone from 55,000 to 37,000. And that's a dramatic change in enrollment. That doesn't mean that there are less children in the city of New York. There are less children in our schools. What's one of the reasons why there are less children in our schools? One of the reasons is tuition becomes unaffordable to many of our families.
Especially now.
The average family income is about $27,000 in a Catholic school. Right now, the average tuition in a Catholic school about $3,500. Our average cost per pupil, $5,500. So you can see that gap has to be filled in somehow, and it's getting broader and broader, because what's happening is as the number of students declines, as enrollment declines, that puts more and more pressure on an increase in tuition, which drives once more a decline in enrollment.
So the bottom line is that this is really a lifeline for at least having some ability for Catholic kids to be educated?
I think it's worth exploring, and I think that that's what Bishop DiMarzio and the mayor are doing. They're saying, hey, all options are on the table. We recognize that we're seeking to look at Catholic schools, see how we can provide for the educational needs of the people of our diocese. So we're putting all the options on the table. This is an option. There are a lot of unanswered questions. It's not a done deal. But we're trying to move very quickly to understand all the issues that are at play, and to come up with a plan in place. So hopefully we would have some charter schools that would replace some of the schools that might have been closed in September.
Otherwise, there would be buildings that would be empty, not being used. Is that correct?
Right now, I mean, the diocese says we've already seen through this Preserving the Vision process that we're going through, which is really intended to strengthen Catholic education. That's key. Preserving the Vision is all about strengthening education so that we can increase our enrollment. But in order to do that, we had to really deal with the question of excess capacity. And basically, our schools are operating at about 85% of capacity. At 15% of seats that are left unfilled, what we want to do is make sure that the money that how we're subsidizing Catholic education follows the student, so that the maximum amount of resources that the diocese expends, last year $12 million, is reaching the student and is not going simply to sustain buildings.
I would suspect that this subject is going to be explored at great length, and we are going to continue to talk about it here. Right now, though, we have to take a break. We'll be right back. Welcome back to In the Arena. We want to talk to you for just a moment about exactly what this program is. Father Harrington, really, you came up with the title, and it is from
Teddy Roosevelt, his speech at the Sorbonne. But it's not simply about Teddy Roosevelt. What it really is about all those who are engaged in the discussion. Not people who are simply sitting on the sidelines commenting on what's taking place, but those who are actively engaged in the formation of the culture, in questions of public policy. And really, that's where we as Christians, we as Catholic Christians belong. We should be actively forming the culture, whether that's in the arts, music, whether it's in painting, whether it's in public policy matters, whether it's in questions of architecture, whatever it might be. We as Catholics have to be in the arena, helping to form our culture, form our society.
Well, today we've talked about indulgences, which has been very much in the public eye recently. We've talked about the charter schools, parochial schools becoming charter schools. We've talked about that, and that's a discussion we will continue. What else would you believe would be a really wonderful format for us to talk about here to open up the discussion?
I'd like to talk about the Freedom of Choice Act, which is a bill that has been languishing for about 20 years, which has serious implications for our Catholic belief, and to just ask what it means when a Catholic politician supports a bill like that.
Msgr?
I think a lot of people struggle with addictions, and I think to try to talk about how all the pressures, maybe even of the economic downturn, might have an impact on family life and on their own addictions that they might be having difficulties with.
I personally would like to talk about the media and, for example, blogs, and how perhaps they can lead to sin-like behavior, and really how damaging they could be for reputations, for rumors, for gossip, for all kinds of things, because there's so many untruths that can be in them. I think that would really be important. A lot of our kids today use blogs. We use blogs. Journalists use blogs.
Sad but true.
Yeah. So it's. I think that would be an interesting subject to talk about in terms of pop culture. And you, Father? Yeah,
I think that what I really want to know is what the people who are watching are interested in, because we can get we can think about things by the news, what's making news, but there might be things out there that our viewers are interested in, and if they are interested, we hope that they would send us some of their ideas. Personally, one of the areas that I would be very interested in is to take a look at mayoral control of the New York City public schools. You take a look at what has happened in New York City public schools over the last number of years under Mayor Bloomberg. Dramatic improvement in the education in our public school system. So I think that this is a very, very significant public policy question that affects more than half of the children who go to public schools, Catholic children. Half of our children, rather, go to public schools. So here in the city of New York, big question for me, mayoral control of public schools.
And also, I'd like to talk about Catholic responsibility or Christian responsibility, or even responsibility of anybody to help be green and preserve the resources of this country. I mean, the Pope issued a whole paper about the subject of sin and the environment.
There's a whole lot of material, Jane, to talk about. You could talk about the Society of St. Peter and the excommunication of bishops. We could talk about, there's a lot to talk
forever. But right now, we have got to stop talking. We are running out of time, but I just want to let you know that you don't need a television set to watch us. We are streaming online at netny.net. And of course, you can also go there and maybe clue us in a little bit about some of the subjects that you would like to hear us talk about, because we're open to just about anything. Thank you so much for joining us. For Father Harrington, Msgr Vaccari, and Grand Gallicho, I'm Jane Hanson. Thank you very much, and we'll see you next week in the arena.